So far we have seen the map object, but we haven't really done much with it. In this video, we're going to save the map object as a web map content item. This will allow us to view the web map in ArcGIS Online. So open up the create a map.py script from the map object folder. Up top, we are importing our GIS class so we can access ArcGIS Online, and also our map class so we can create a map object that we can save then as a web map item in our ArcGIS Online. We first access ArcGIS Online. We then want to instantiate a map object, so we call our map class and we'll assign it to a variable called WebMap. And we want to set the base map for our map object. We know our map object has a Basemap Manger that we access via the Basemap property for our map object. Our Basemap Manager has a property called Basemap, and we'll head over to documentation for this Basemap property now. Here we have the Basemap property for our Basemap Manager, and we can get and set the current basemap of the map. Basemap values can be found by calling the Basemaps property, and we saw this in the previous video where we accessed the Basemaps property for our Basemap Manager to list the available basemaps. So let's head back over to PyScripter. We want to set the basemap by calling our map object and accessing the Basemap Manager. And from the Basemap Manager, we want to access the Basemap property and set this to equal the basemap of interest, which is going to be our dark grey vector basemap. Now, if you don't have access to the dark grey vector, print out that list of basemaps available and select one of your own choice. Next up, we want to set the map extent. Our map class has a property called extent, where we feed in a dictionary defining the extent of our web map. So in this example, I'm going to use the WKID of 4326, which is WGS 84, and I'm going to set the extents of the web map to centre on Galway in Ireland. Let's pop over to documentation for the extent property. Here we have the map object extent property, and we can get and set the map's extent. There is a note here that we must include the spatial reference in the extent dictionary, which we are doing in our code. We can see here that there is one parameter required when you're setting it, that is a required dictionary, where we're setting the extent of the map to be this dictionary here. So we'll pop back over to PyScripter. We're going to apply a thumbnail to our web map item in ArcGIS Online. So we set the thumbnail path. So we'll create a variable called thumbnail and we'll set it to be a path to our FDM web map thumb1.png. If I head over to that path, here I have our thumbnails folder, and we're going to set it to be this thumbnail here. I'll close that down and head back to PyScripter. We're then going to save our web map as an item in our ArcGIS Online, and we're going to save it to our FDM training folder. Now, our web map object has a save method. So let's head over to the documentation for this save method before we continue. Here we have the save method for our map object, and this saves the map object as a new web map item in your GIS, which will be your ArcGIS Online. The save method has one required parameter, and that is the item properties. You can see here it is a required dictionary, and in this dictionary there are three required keys, and they are title, tag and snippet. If we scroll down, we can see the keys that are available to use in the item properties dictionary. So title is the required string for the name of the item. This will be the name of our web map. We have tags, which can be a list of comma separated values or a list of strings. And we have our snippet, which is our summary. It says here that the summary must be a maximum of 250 characters. There are other optional properties that we can set. Now extent here does not work. This should be removed from this list. We have to set the extent through the extent property. We are also going to set the thumbnail. So we're going to use a path to our file on disk, and we're also going to set a folder to place our web map item in our nominated folder, which is our training folder. So let's head back over to PyScripter once more. We have our web map item dictionary here that is going to be our map item properties. We're setting the title to be API Python Web Map, our snippet or our summary to be our Python injected snippet. We're also going to use the description key and set that to Python injected description, and we'll set our tags to be Python injected tags, and we could also set that as a list of strings instead. Now we want to save our web map object, so our map object, as a web map item. So create a variable called web map item, and we'll set this to equal our map object, and we'll call the save method. And we know our save method has a required parameter called item properties, and we're going to set that to equal our web map item dictionary above. We also want to set our thumbnail parameter, and we'll set that to equal our thumbnail path. And lastly, we want to set the folder where the web map item gets saved, and we'll set this to be our ArcGIS AFP03 _ FDM training folder. The save method will return an item object, and we're going to be looking at item objects in more detail in a couple of sections time. For now, just to note that the save method will return an item object which represents our web map item in ArcGIS Online. We will print that web map item to screen to show it is an item object that is created, and we're also going to get the web map item ID, and it is this web map item ID that we're going to use to get the web map item in future videos. We will take this web map item ID and we'll paste it into a notepad or CSV file, something that gives you easy access to copy and paste it into all scripts going forward. Before running, let's pop on over to ArcGIS Online. Here I am in our training folder, and we can see we have our hosted table, our feature layers, our CSV and our shape files that were populated when we ran the course data setup. After running the script, we will refresh this page and we should see that our web map has been added as a web map item. So let's head back over to PyScripter and run the script. Let's click run. Our script is complete. We can see that when we printed our web map item that was returned from our save method, it is indeed an item object, and it has our title of API Python Web Map. That is the name of our web map. We can see the item is of type web map. Now the item object can be many different types. Here it is a web map. It can be a feature layer collection that represents a feature service. It could be a dashboard. But for us, we've just created a web map item type. And we can see the owner is Final Draft Mapping. That's me. That would be your username there. We also printed the item ID for our web map item object. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it into a notepad so I have easy access to it. Now I have quick access to that ID for future lessons. Let's head over to ArcGIS Online and refresh our page. I'm in our training folder here and I'm going to refresh the page. And we can see we now have a web map item. You can see here we have a table item, feature layer item, CSV and so on. We just created this web map item from our map object. Now if I click into our web map item, we can see the thumbnail was set, our summary was set, our description was set. We have our dark grey vector base map. We have no layers or tables at the moment. And our tags over here on the right hand side were also set. Now let's open up in a map viewer and see that the extent was also set. And we can see we are centered on Galway in Ireland. If I zoom out, we can see a bit more of Ireland. Now we'll just pop back to our content and into our web map, and we'll go into settings, and we can see the default settings. We have not set content status. We could delete this map by accident because we don't have delete protection set, and you can see the default settings for the web map that was created. In this lesson, we saw how we could take our map object and create a web map item object in ArcGIS Online.